I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: was Serena Williams the victim of sexism? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is because a couple of days ago, Serena Williams lost the final of the US Open tennis to Naomi Osaka. She was roundly and soundly beaten, yet not long after that defeat, the following op-ed piece was published. I think it was the Washington Post who first published it, and then it was syndicated in lots of other places. It turned up in my country. One of our media outlets republished it, syndicated it over here. And this op-ed piece declares that Serena Williams didn't actually lose that match. She was really the victim of sexism, and so that's why she lost that match. Let's have a look at this op-ed piece together. We'll read it now together to discover what exciting gems it has in store for all of us. So it's by a lady called Sally Jenkins, and the headline is "Chair Umpires Sexist Power Play Ruins Powerful US Open Women's Final." So no holds barred there. We're blaming it all on sexism. So let's get into it. Chair umpire Carlos Ramos managed to rob not one but two players in the Women's US Open Final. Nobody has ever seen anything like it. An umpire so wrecked a big occasion that both players, Naomi Osaka and Serena Williams alike, wound up distraught with tears streaming down their faces during the trophy presentation, and an incensed crowd screamed boos at the court. Ramos took what began as a minor infraction and turned it into one of the nastiest and most emotional controversies in the history of tennis, all because he couldn't take a woman speaking sharply to him. Williams abused her racket, but Ramos did something far uglier. He abused his authority. Talk about emotionally loaded language, but here we go. Champions get heated. It's their nature to burn. All good umpires in every sport understand that the heart of their job is to help temper the moment, to turn the dial down, not up, and to be quiet stewards of the event rather than to let their own temper play a role in determining the outcome. If you actually watch the incident, Ramos was not the one who was out of control, who was being driven by an emotional outburst here. So this is right off the get-go, this is a completely false claim. Instead, Ramos made himself the chief player in the women's final. He marred Osaka's first Grand Slam title and one of Williams' last bids for all-time greatness. Over what? A tone of voice. Male players have sworn and cursed at the top of their lungs, hurled and blasted their equipment into shards, and never been penalised as Williams was in the second set of the US Open final. And that is completely untrue. There are so many examples you could cite. This happens all the time, of male players doing exactly what she's claiming they do and get away with, and they don't get away with it. They do get penalised for it. I just feel like the fact that I have to go through this is just an example for the next person that has emotions and that wants to express themselves and wants to be a strong woman, Williams said afterwards. It was pure pettiness from Ramos that started the ugly cascade in the first place when he issued a warning over coaching. Well, no, that's not pettiness. The rule is pretty clear. You're not allowed to coach a player from the sidelines during a match like that, and that's exactly what happened. The coach himself has admitted that he did this. So it definitely happened. She broke the rules. It's not petty. It would be petty if an umpire looked at her and said, "Oh, I don't like that outfit you're wearing. That's awful. Who told you to wear that?" That would be an umpire being petty, right? But when an umpire enforces the rules of tennis like they're supposed to, that's the umpire doing their job. Where are we? As if a signal from her coach in the grandstand has ever been the difference in a Serena Williams match. That's irrelevant. The point is, the rule says you can't do it. They broke the rules and the umpire acted on their rule breaking. Rule breaking doesn't suddenly become okay just because you don't get any clear or tangible benefit from the rule breaking. So in other words, we're only going to penalise you if you break rules and it brings you an advantage, but we're not going to penalise you if you break rules blatantly and it doesn't give you an advantage. That's not how umpiring is supposed to work. It was a technicality that could be called on any player in any match on any occasion. Well, that's what you just said, that that's not what's supposed to be happening. And now you're saying it is actually something that could be called on any player on any occasion. And that's exactly what the umpire did. And it is ludicrous in view of the power-on-power match that was taking place on the court between Williams and the 20-year-old Osaka. Well, no, it's not actually inconsequential at all, because when you've got two opponents who are equally matched, a small act of cheating like that can actually provide a huge difference to one of them. So it actually does become quite important. It's not simply a matter of saying, oh, well, because they're so equally matched and it's two people at the top of their game, we can ignore the cheating. That's nonsense. That's not how that works at all. It was one more added source of stress for Williams. Oh, how dare the umpire stress her out by calling her up on her blatant rule breaking. Still trying to come back from her maternity leave and fighting to regain her fitness and resume her pursuit of Margaret Court's record of 24 Grand Slam singles titles. I don't cheat, she told Ramos hotly. She was being coached. Her coach admitted to that after the match, that he had coached her. That is cheating. And so she was cheating. When Williams, still seething, busted her racket over losing a crucial game, Ramos docked her a point. Breaking equipment is a violation. You're absolutely right, it is. So is coaching. And because Ramos had already hit her with the coaching violation, which is also breaking the rules, it was a second offence and so ratcheted up the penalty. And that's exactly how tennis works. And if you're a professional tennis player, you know that. You know what the rules are. You know what you're not allowed to do and what you're allowed to do. And if you do what you're not allowed to do, you can't then turn around and feign surprise and claim that this is some victimization because you get pulled up for breaking the rules. The controversy should have ended there. At that moment, it was up to Ramos to de-escalate the situation, to stop inserting himself into the match and to let things play out on the court. In front of him were two players in a sweltering state who were giving their everything while he sat a lordly height above them. Below him, Williams vented, "You stole a point from me, you're a thief." Now, this is absolute absurdity. I am not a professional umpire or a professional referee, but some years ago I did several years of refereeing adult sport, social grade sport. So I refereed touch rugby and I also refereed soccer with adult players. And I can tell you right now, one of the important lessons I learnt from that experience was that if you're a referee or an umpire or a match official, one of the worst things that you can do is to actually stand back and do nothing when things are ratcheting up and getting out of control. The best thing that you can do is actually to take back control with calm but clearly delivered and concise and very objective instructions being issued to players about what you expect, about what they're supposed to do, and what's going to happen next. You don't let the situation just continue escalating, and you do not let players resolve it for themselves, because there's absolutely no guarantee that that is what they are going to do. It is equally likely that things ratchet up even further, because the worst thing you have on a sports field or during a sports match is uncertainty. If everything becomes arbitrary and you can no longer rely on the framework of rules because they're not being applied consistency, or the referee or the match umpire is just sort of making it up as he goes, then what tends to happen is that tends to change the whole psyche of the game, and all the players and all the participants, their whole mood starts to change, the way they engage with the sport, with that particular match starts to change, and things generally, they get out of control. They don't get better. That is not a good and sound strategy for refereeing a sports match. Let's carry on. There was absolutely nothing worthy of a penalty in her statement. Again, if you abuse the umpire, you can be penalised. It doesn't matter whether you think that she shouldn't be penalised, you can be penalised for doing that. It was pure vapour release. She said it in a tone of wrath. Well, hold on a minute. It can't be both pure vapour release and said in a tone of wrath. They're not the same thing. But it was compressed and controlled. It doesn't matter how controlled it is. In many ways, that makes the wrath probably a little bit more troubling, I would have thought, than someone who's just purely having an emotional outburst. All Ramos had to do was to continue to sit coolly above it, and Williams would have channeled herself back into the match. No, that's not what an umpire should do in these situations. And in actual fact, there's no guarantee that she's going to do that. In fact, it's probably more likely that a player who is out of control and not reminded to get themselves back under control will just keep escalating, and things could actually get far worse. But he couldn't take it. He wasn't going to let a woman talk to him that way. A man, sure, Ramos has put up with worse from a man. At the French Open in 2017, Ramos levelled Rafael Nadal with a ticky-tacky penalty over a time delay, and Nadal told him he'd see to it that Ramos never refereed one of his matches again. So as evidence of a pattern here of an act of victimisation, she cites one other example involving a man, but she completely ignores the actual reality of what happened in this match and Serena Williams' own history and her pattern of behaving. And she completely fails to mention the fact that this was a tennis match between two women. So how exactly is the sexism? He's what? Penalising one woman to benefit another woman, and that's supposed to be an act of sexism? This makes no sense. But he wasn't going to take it from a woman pointing a finger at him and speaking in a tone of aggression. So he gave Williams that third violation for verbal abuse, which he's entitled to do. That's the rules. And a whole game penalty. And now it was 5-3. And we'll never know if young Osaka really won the 2018 US Open or had it handed to her by a man who was going to make Serena Williams feel his power. It was an offence far worse than any Williams had committed. No, it's not an offence when a referee actually does their job and referees a match. That's the whole point. They're supposed to step in when players start offending. And secondly, this is absurd because now you've gone from claiming that this is some sort of sexist victimisation to now casting serious doubt about Osaka's actual victory. This incident happened at a point in the match when Williams was already losing. She was already being outplayed by Osaka. It is absurd to claim that she was possibly handed this match. No, she wasn't. She was beaten soundly by a better, more well-equipped player. So the claim that Osaka here was handed this victory is absolutely insulting to Osaka and to the effort and to the skill that she played in that match. Chris Evert spoke for the entire crowd and the television audience, well, obviously not everyone in the television audience because a lot of people are slamming this editorial, when she said, "I've been in tennis a long time and I've never seen anything like it." Well, clearly that's not true, as we'll see in just a moment. Competitive rage has long been Williams' fuel, and it's a situational personality. The whole world knows that about her, and so does Ramos. So in other words, she does actually have a competitive rage, and there's a problematic streak here that does keep showing itself, and it's a pattern of behaviour here. She's had instances where she ranted and deserved to be disciplined, but she's outlived all that. Now, hold on a minute, because by the way, she doesn't mention any of those incidents in this actual op-ed piece, but let's have a look at some of those incidents so you can get a feel for the kind of behaviour and how she's conducted herself previously. In a 2009 semi-final, she got called for a foot violation by a female line umpire, and so she turned and gave the female line umpire an earful, which included the lovely sentiment that she was going to shove this ball down your throat. In 2011, in a final, she was called by the chair umpire, this again was a female umpire, because she was yelling, "Come on," before her opponent had even got to the ball, which is obviously a distracting technique to try and interfere with your opponent. And when she was called up for it by the umpire, she released a tirade on the umpire, calling the umpire a quote-unquote loser, and then telling her this, giving her this little threat of physical violence: "If you ever see me walking down the hall, you better look the other way." Now, to turn around and suggest that, oh, well, she's outlived all that, like, oh, that just doesn't matter. With the wave of the hand, I'm going to make all that disappear. You're not presenting the facts of her actual own history and the fact that this is not an isolated incident, what happened here in this match. She has become a player of directed passion. In other words, she has emotional outbursts like the one we saw and she got called up for. She has done the admirable work of learning self-command and grown into one of the more courteous and generous champions in the game. Seriously, you cannot with a straight face sit there and write that statement after I've just explained to you some of her previous indiscretions, that she's someone who's got amazing self-command and she's one of the most courteous and generous champions in the game, when she's threatening to do physical violence against people because they call her up for infractions. If you doubted that, all you had to do was watch how she got a hold of herself once the match was over and how hard she tried to make it about Osaka. Well, at that point, the game was up. And it would have been a pretty silly person who kept trying to insist, because she had clearly broken the rules. And it seems that probably by the end of the game, Williams was actually able to understand something that the author of this op-ed piece hasn't actually understood, and that was that she was in the wrong. and that it was right for the umpires to penalise her the way they did. Williams understood that she was the only person in the stadium who had the power to make that incensed crowd stop booing. Well, no, that's not true either, because every single member of that incensed crowd is a human being. They possess the capacity for free will. That means they can transcend, rise above their urges, and choose to do the good if they want to, and stop acting like spoilt children and screaming at the umpires for doing their job. It's absurd to claim that her fans need her to do this. It actually points to the fact that maybe her fans are learning their behaviour from her. They don't actually exercise much in the way of self-command when it comes to the big moments. And she did it beautifully. "Let's make this the best moment we can," she said. Well, clearly she didn't do that while she was actually playing the match. And clearly you haven't done that here by issuing a writing and then posting this op-ed piece, which has accused her of being a victim of sexism. Like I said, how is this sexism? Two women playing a game of tennis, and the umpire made a decision against one woman that favoured another woman. How is that sexism? Please explain this to me like I'm 3, because this does not compute. I actually suspect that maybe the author might have even been tempted to claim that this was racism, but because of the actual ethnicities of all the people involved, she probably couldn't make that one stick. This editorial, by the way, when it was posted here in New Zealand, this was roundly attacked, and rightly so, by commenters. In fact, they closed the comment section because so many people just overwhelmingly came out and called out the absurdity of this opinion. No, this was not handed to Osaka. Osaka was the better player. She won fairly and squarely. No, Williams was not cheated. She was someone who made bad decisions, and those bad decisions rightly came back to haunt her when the umpire did his job. That's how tennis is supposed to work. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon or PayPal. There's a link for both in the description below. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.